Welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who is ready to share his preseason hot takes. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. I don't have a lot of hot takes. I feel like I'm mostly chalk for this division. Looking forward to it, though, and I'm excited for this division, though. I'm going to talk about it. Let's do it.
Yeah, a division that's gotten worse today.
Yeah, it's almost perfect timing by us. It's like we planned this thing. It's like this division has been in the news the past couple of days, right? And all of a sudden, it's the one we have on our schedule. So it just happened that way, I guess.
Yeah, so unfortunate that it happened, but fortunate timing
Yeah.
at least that didn't happen tomorrow, and then our whole podcast is ruined. I think this is one of those that you circle on the podcast calendar of like this could be a real interesting division to talk about.
Without a doubt, yeah. I think it's one of the best divisions in football. In fact, I have it as the second best division in football. I think there's three really strong teams here and one interesting team. We'll talk about them for sure too. They've definitely been in the news. But yeah, it's I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think it's a really fascinating division that has kind of turned on its head a little bit the last couple of years, and there's just been so many changes. It feels like in this division the past few seasons, and it's almost a breath of fresh air for everybody.
Yeah, we're now doing the Can the Lions, do it again. When have we ever said that before, and not in a negative way?
Like 70 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think four teams. I'll be honest, three teams I'm excited to talk about now, Kyle. It was four a week ago.
I would agree. Agree. It's a bummer, but yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, well, I guess let's just dive in. Enough preamble. Kyle, who do you have now with the news and everything? Who do you have finishing fourth in this division?
Yeah, we're diving right in. I had this team fourth before. I'm just it almost confirms my thing though. I do have the Minnesota Vikings fourth. I do think there are some interesting things about this team. I did feel like this was a little bit of a transition year, and like they have some really fascinating pieces and then some pieces that I am questioning. But at the same time, this all kind of sucks, right? Like, JJ McCarthy had a very, very strong preseason debut. I mean, you take preseason with a grain of salt, but at the same time, it was a strong debut. They have weapons. They have a defense that overperformed expectations by, huge measures last season and have one of the better defensive coordinators in football. We were all excited to see what this season could be, especially with JJ McCarthy in the mix. And then this all kind of happened. So it is a bummer. I do think this might be a little bit of a transition year, but I have the Vikings finishing fourth.
Yeah, and it all starts with the two guys at the top with Kevin O'Connell, who I like a lot. Actually, I feel like I'm one of his defenders again because I'm one of the people who knows his name. I think needs to get out there now. Needs to stay more fun quotes. I think that's his biggest critique because no one knows him outside of Vikings fans. But I think Andrew has a really good point about the quarterback stuff. We should start there. How does this change the division? Wasn't Darnold the starter anyway? Darnold was scheduled to be the week one starter. That was in place. I think the question was, how long was he going to be the starter? Was this going to be one of those, I see your dog in the background, Kyle, as I'm reminded of when Bill O'Brien had Deshaun Watson start for about half of the first week, and then, he wasn't starting. It was Tom Savage started week one, and that lasted about a half a game of football, and then Watson came in. Who knows how long before McCarthy was going to come in is what I'm trying to say. But I do think it's a fair question of what is the difference between a Sam Darnold season and an average rookie quarterback season, and how big of a drop-off will it actually be this year?
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I mean, the other thing too I think about is like when the Seahawks brought in Matt Flynn, right? And they paid him that money, and then Russell Wilson beat him in camp, right? And so I always, I know they said Darnold's the quarterback right now, but I don't know if that would have been the case in week 4 of preseason if JJ McCarthy had played as well as he showed in that first game. So I think all that goes together. You said what's the difference between an average rookie quarterback and Sam Darnold? I think it's a downgrade. This has not been a pro Sam Darnold podcast for a long time. It's not going to change today. I think this is immediately probably our 32nd ranked quarterback in the NFL now, right? Like we did our quarterback rankings earlier in the off season, but if we were to re-rank it right now, this is 32.
Yeah, probably. I would have to go back unless there's someone I'm forgetting. That I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not saying it's not a downgrade. All I'm saying is, what is the downgrade, and is it possible? Like, if you had to pick a team to lose who we consider to be their best quarterback for the season, like the Vikings are one of the teams that it's not a huge drop off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
I mean, just
But
throwing it out there. So far, Darnold was the starter. So at least, maybe that was just to help McCarthy develop, but it might be because Darnold's better right now and McCarthy just needs time to develop.
yeah, I mean, it could be that. Maybe it is that situation. But at the same time, I think part of the problem I had with Minnesota and why I had them fourth to begin with is they didn't address the backup quarterback to the standards. I don't think this is a good backup quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
so, I don't trust him to step into games and be functional. Maybe I'm wrong. It's been a few years since we've seen him, but I'm not convinced. So I think it's I think it's a big problem.
Yeah. Andrew brings up clearly Colin Cowherd is going to disagree with your Sam Darnold takes, Kyle. I think I'm higher on Darnold than you are. I think he's a more than capable backup. I just don't love him as a starter. But either way, tier 5 quarterback. We don't have to spend forever on him. Kyle, this receiving core is really good. Jordan Addison went down with an injury, but apparently it's not too bad. So I'm going to just assume he'll be there week 1. Maybe that'll change. Justin Jefferson, he's adding a lot just by himself to the receiving core of just him would be good. So especially when you have depth, you also have TJ Hawkinson, one of the better receiving tight ends in football. Why not? I'll give this a tier 1 receiving core. I know that I would like another receiver here, like Trent Sherfield. Seems to be everyone keeps the waiting on him to maybe like be a solid contributor. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but I don't know. I just think that 1-2-3 combo is so strong, and Jefferson himself is the best wide receiver in football, probably, or one of them. There's still Tyreek Hill, but I think tier 1 feels fair.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. On paper, everybody on the field, this is a tier 1 group. It probably won't be a tier 1 group this season just because of, like you said, we don't know what Addison's like full extent of his injury is. He was terrific his rookie season, I thought, but if he's missing some time, obviously that hurts it a little bit. TJ Hawkinson, they said, is already going to miss, I guess, 3 to 7 games potentially. So that hurts a lot too. But like everybody on paper, this is a tier 1 group, and it's really good. And it starts with Justin Jefferson, who is one of the best receivers in football, if not the best. And, I did a whole thing on him, like comparing him to Jerry Rice back in our 25 under 25 rankings. So if you want to go back and listen to that, go back to that show too. But yeah, I mean, he's on the track to be one of the best receivers of all time. And that should, that's enough to catch people's attention, right?
Yeah, that helps, certainly. The offensive line also, there's some interesting stuff here. One of the real underrated tackle tandems in the league of Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw. Doesn't get much better than that. Interior, you have Garrett Bradbury, who they spent the first round pick on a while ago, and you've kind of been waiting for him to develop. Hasn't really happened just yet. They do have Ed Ingram, who I think is a solid guard. And then the other guard right now, Blake Brendel, is the guy who I see slotted in at the guard position. Michael Jurgens could be, he was a 7th round pick this past year. Maybe he'll come in. But whether it's a 6th round pick from a year ago or a 7th round pick now, they do have, it's not a complete offensive line by any means. But you have really good tackles. I think, again, I think Ed Ingram's solid. I think Garrett Bradbury's fine. So I'm in between tier 2 and tier 3. I was a little bit nice with the receiver, so I'll be a little bit mean here. I'll stick with tier 3, but you could talk me into tier 2.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. The tackles are awesome. I do really like that duo, but it is a group that I think the interior could get beaten up on, and I do worry about that kind of building up over the season.
Yeah. And then for the running back, I don't know what to make of Aaron Jones, really. I know that he's like, I guess he's still solid, right? I mean, I think anytime a running back changes teams, you assume they stink because that usually is what happens. But I think he's still fine. Like, I don't know. You have Ty Chandler as a backup. I think I'll go tier 3 here for the running back room.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, as someone who's had a lot of Aaron Jones stock over the year, I'm excited to see him actually get the ball a little bit more. So this will be fun. But yeah, I just want to see him get the ball more.
Yeah. As for the defense, Kyle, we all like Brian Flores, and he's someone who, might have his work cut out for him. But again, we said the same thing last year, and he did a really good job. So we'll see if that is, how replaceable, how often you can repeat that. But there's guys here in the secondary, like Shaquille Griffin is in the mix. You have, Byron Murphy Jr., who I think they're expecting to see more of. Makai Blackman is someone who PFF was a big fan of in his 400 snaps last year. So you have that going for you in the corner room. The safety tandem of Harrison Smith, who I think is still good. I think people thought he was washed up like 5 years ago. I think he's still playing all right. And then Cameron Bynum as the other safety. So I don't know. It's not a great secondary. I think even the guys that you're talking about as the positives, I still don't know if you love them as a starter, and they're going to be the number one starter at time. I'm going to stick with tier 5 here, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it. I do, but the thing is that this system, the way it was run last year and why it was so effective, and I think I remember saying on this podcast when we did our NFC North preview last year that this could be one of the worst defenses in football.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out to be, quite the opposite of that. And Brian Flores did do a really good job. I mean, part of it was he knew he had a bad secondary, so the goal was to get to the quarterback as quickly as possible. So,
Mm-hmm.
they throw a lot of bodies at the line of scrimmage. They blitz a lot. They get after the quarterback, and, you can kind of get you are going to get burned sometimes. You are going to get toasted, but at the same time, it makes up for a tier 5 secondary if you're getting the quarterback a lot.
Yeah. And the way they're going to do it this year is with a bunch of different guys, which is kind of what they did last year. I mean, you had Daniil Hunter as kind of their, every snap guy. They've lost him, so that's a concern. But they did add Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, two guys who had really good years last year. So we'll see if they can, I'm very interested in, can Van Ginkel do it again? His advanced stats, fantastic, but is that a 1-year wonder? I don't know. They obviously drafted Dallas Turner, who they're hoping can come in and, play well right away. Again, rookie. We'll see how well it goes. But I mean, those could be 3 good options at the edge rush position. On the interior, not as crazy about it, but still some guys like Harrison Phillips, I think is still solid. So you also have Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery, Jonah Williams on the inside. I didn't mention the linebackers in coverage, but they have a couple good linebackers with Blake Cashman and Ivan Pierce Jr. So it's. I don't know really what to make of this, to be honest, right? Because I could see it going a lot of different ways. I think I'm just going to stick with a tier 3 run defense and a tier 2 pass rush for now.
Yeah. It kind of feels like trying to replace Jason Giambi with Scott Hatteberg and a few other guys, David Justice, right?
Yeah.
Like they actually ended up paying Grenard a little bit of money, but it is almost replacing Hunter in the aggregate. So they get guys like Van Ginkel and Grenard who are individually pretty good players, but they're not Daniil Hunter level players. And then they draft Dallas Turner, who they're hoping to turn into that guy, but it could take a little bit of time for him. So I do like the money ball approach. I do think there's just a fair amount of good players here, and I think that they can be effective. It's just going to be, how effective is it without that number one guy?
Yeah. And I think there's I don't know. I think the question too is like, what are we getting out of Dallas Turner this year? If he comes in and does what they hope he can do right away, this all of a sudden could look really good. And also, I mean, I think it's fair to say, like Grenard and Van Ginkel are changing positions. Sure, edge rushers don't tend to have the variance of changing, or excuse me, they're changing teams. And sure, edge rushers don't typically have the variance that other positions do when you change teams. This is a scheme unlike any other. So I am just wondering how that's going to translate.
Yeah, I think it's all fair questions. But once again, it's one of those things too where, similar to, you have pretty good players. I think they become very good players too when you're throwing a lot of bodies at the quarterback, when you're blitzing a lot, when you're aggressive on defense. And that's something this team definitely isn't afraid to do. Even a guy like Daniil Hunter last season, he was always a pretty darn good player, right? But the advanced stats didn't love him as much as his sack numbers were. But then last season, he was, even better to his advanced numbers. And I think a lot of it is they're aggressive. And I think it's going to cater to a lot of these players too.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine them being that much worse. You're right. It's hard to imagine them being that much worse when you now get one-on-one matchups all day.
Yeah. I mean, I don't expect the scheme to change a whole lot from last season, right? And it could work. The one thing is, it's like, it caught everybody by surprise, I think, a little bit last season. If they're not getting to the quarterback, they're going to have trouble.
Yeah. So with the Vikings, they're interesting. I saw like a meme of like the Vikings are now in first overall pick contention. I don't know if I agree with that. I still really like this receiving core, even with maybe some injuries. I think that I do like this pieces of this offensive line. So I think that the offense could do enough, and I do expect Brian Flores to show up and get this defense to show up, even if it won't be as spectacular. I'm not predicting obviously like a championship contending team with the Vikings, but I'm going to go 7-10. I don't think this is a disastrous team.
I think that's fair. I might go a little bit lower just because of the quarterback situation now, because I was expecting JJ McCarthy to get in, but at the same time, I don't think it's a disastrous team either. They're very good at receiver. They're pretty reliable at running back. They're pretty good on the offensive line in spots, and I think they have good players on this defense and a good defensive coach. Like those are all things that are cater to winning football. You're just missing the quarterback.
Yeah, it's fair, and that's why they drafted a quarterback, right? They did the right thing. It sucks that they had the injury, but we'll see how this goes, Kyle. So I put up the poll. I just put it up like right as we were going live, so it's still it could change. But Kyle, guess what percent said the Vikings will win this division?
I imagine if you just did it, it's got to be kind of low. I'm gonna guess like 5%.
5%. You are too optimistic. 3% have the Vikings. People are vibes are not high in Minnesota right now.
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, I would be pretty dejected after seeing that news the last couple of days. But hopefully, JJ McCarthy gets healthy, and you look forward to it next season.
Yeah, could be something too where I'm looking through the poll. Like 4% had the Titans winning, but like maybe that division's a little bit easier in theory to win as well. So it's not less. Yeah. It's also about the who you have to beat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a tough division. Like I said, we're about to get into the number 3 team. I don't think anyone should feel disrespected because I think all 3 of these teams can make the playoffs.
Yeah, okay. And since you said it, fans will be totally cool about it and not be upset whatsoever if you're too low on their team.
Yeah, exactly. We have rational fans.
We do have rational fans. We also have irrational fans, and we like all of them. I also have to mention, we have like twice as many people currently live than we usually do. So thanks to everyone who's checking out. I guess preseason's back now. People are more excited. It's the division, like I said, we were all waiting to talk about. So thanks to everyone who's hanging out with us. But Kyle, there are 3 teams. One of them was in the NFC Championship. One of them was in the lost in the divisional round to the team that beat the Lions in the NFC Championship. And then you have the team that has picked first overall back-to-back years. Which one, but obviously a lot of reason for optimism with the Chicago Bears. Which one do you have finishing third?
Yeah, this is without a doubt the sleeper team of the season. It feels like I think it's almost become the trendy sleeper team of the season. They really loaded up this season. They drafted the number 1 overall pick, who is maybe the best quarterback prospect since Peyton Manning, if not Andrew Luck. And he's fantastic, and I'm really excited to watch him play football in the NFL level. Chicago Bears, number 3. I think that they can absolutely make the playoffs. I'm a little shocked they didn't change coaches, but I know they did turn it around at the end of the season. That defense really came along. I'm expecting that defense to be good. And then there's a lot of new pieces on that offense, man. And you know what? I think it could work. And I think it could be very fascinating. So give me the Chicago Bears at number 3. I think I haven't done my final season standings yet. I think this is a playoff team, though. I have them in right now, just off the top of my head, even though they're number 3 here. I'm excited for Bears football.
Vibes are high in Chicago. Vibes are as high in Chicago as they are low in Minnesota right now, I think. It's very fascinating. I mean, I don't know. You're right. You called them the sleeper team. Here's the biggest concern I have is an irrational one, which is every single time the sleeper team, the team that has not come close to the playoffs, but now people are like, maybe this team could not just be a playoff team, but more than that, they have consistently underperformed 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Kyle, that I'm concerned. Just irrationally. Yeah. It's not fair to the last year Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a little bit different, or like the Freddie Kitchens Cleveland Browns has nothing to do with this team. But every time I hear someone say, "Oh, this team could be a sleeper team," I think of the Freddie Kitchens Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I think that's 100% the issue. Mm-hmm. And the sleeper team is actually usually the team we don't expect. a la the Houston Texans last year. Um,
Right.
so it is tough to judge that, and it's tough to kind of decipher that. But it's hard to look at this roster and not get excited. I mean, look at the names on this team compared to last season. Look at what they've done in the offseason, in one offseason, and decided they're going to double down on Caleb Williams being their guy. They put it together a really nice group.
Absolutely, and we can start with you brought up Matt Eberflus. I'll give him a tier 4 head coach. I don't know. I'll be nice. I'm feeling generous. There are things to like about him. I don't think he's a worthless head coach or anything like that. I just wonder if the good outweighs the bad so far. But this is his first real head coaching opportunity with real talent too. Because sometimes you get these head coaches and they don't look great, but they don't have great talent. And it's kind of like, what are they supposed to do? But Kyle, Caleb Williams is the guy we have to talk about, and he is. This is where predictions become impossible because you brought up the Texans, where it's just like C.J. Stroud gets MVP votes his rookie year. Okay, well, obviously that's going to screw up our predictions because you're not going to predict that going in. Or Bryce Young doesn't play very well. Like those were essentially two very similar prospects that just have wildly different, first years. Like it's so hard to say. So I'm going to put Caleb Williams in a tier 4 quarterback tier, but like 100%, if he hits, like this team could be a playoff team or more than that. But he is a rookie quarterback. He might not hit ever. He might not hit right away as well as another option. So very, one of the most fascinating stories entering this season is Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I do think if he performed at a tier 4 quarterback level, Bears fans are probably pretty disappointed in year 1. That being said, he can't be judged against CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert and guys like that, right? Like he has to just kind of be his own guy. And the big thing is just going to be, you want to see development out of him. You want to see him improve each week, and you want to see him put the Bears in a competitive position to win games. I do think the biggest thing is, like, especially when we talked about Eberflus, it's very rare for a head coach to get 2 rookie quarterbacks to have a shot at, right? And he's getting his second one. So I'm curious what the leash is for both of these guys, especially Eberflus, though, if Caleb does struggle out of the gate. But, I've been saying this for 3 years now. I think this is one of the most talented guys I've ever seen in college. Like, I think he has all the goods. And, I just said we shouldn't compare him to CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert. It wouldn't be surprising to me if he has a CJ Stroud-like season. I think he's that talented.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is exactly why it just expectations are so high, right? And it's very LeBron James-esque, right? If he has to just come in and be great right away, I'll compare Caleb Williams to a guy who I don't think was quite as good of a prospect, but was at least as hyped up as Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, who came in and, to be honest, was awful year 1. I mean, it was a terrible situation that he was in, but he was really bad year 1 and then got a lot better. So, there's no guarantees.
No guarantees in this sport. If there were guarantees with quarterbacks, drafting would be a lot easier.
Right. Yes, I think so. Yes. Andrew brings up in the chat, Fields was with Nagy his rookie year, but I think you just meant in general to, two drafted quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's fair. I forgot that was a Romo Nagy year there too.
Mm-hmm. It's weird how the Bears keep doing this, right? Usually you just fire both the coach and the Bears doing it. I don't know what, hey, we'll see if it works this year. But here's the difference between some of those other guys and Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is not going into a bad situation. He has weapons across the board. First, the running back room, DeAndre Swift, and Khalil Herbert, who every time I see Khalil Herbert play, he just looks like awesome. I don't get how that guy's not just like a starter in this with how good, at least, his best plays look. Tight end tandem of Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett in the mix. And I see Mercedes Lewis is listed here. I didn't even realize Mercedes Lewis was still in the league. But yes, Mercedes Lewis in the league and is on the Bears. So there you go. Also the receiving core, Romeo Dunze, who they just drafted, DJ Moore, who's kind of been the consistent. If you're better than DJ Moore, you're like a top 15 receiver. If you're worse, you're not, right? He's like that line. Keenan Allen, who's been really good when he's been healthy. Kyle, I think I'm going to go tier 2s for both running back room and for wide receivers, because let's just be honest. Again, Odunze is a rookie. Allen has had trouble staying healthy. I like DJ Moore, but he's also not Justin Jefferson. So this could be awesome. You could have 3 number ones, but I'm not. Again, I can't just assume the best case scenario.
Yeah. No, I think tier 2 is fair. I don't think there's a superstar in this group, but there are 3 really, really good options, especially if Odunze hits. And then I like the 2 tight end options too. And you mentioned it too. Swift can catch the ball out of the backfield. Herbert's explosive. I mean, even Roshan Johnson showed some stuff his first year. This running back room is 3 deep, so they have a lot of weapons. Like it's staggering how quickly this flipped for them. I know they got DJ Moore last year, and he had a good season too. I don't, he's continuing. He has been very good with bad quarterback play his entire career. And if Caleb Williams is 75% what we expect of him as a quarterback prospect, then he should have some awesome numbers next to Caleb Williams for the next few seasons. So this should be a really exciting group to watch. And, I do think, the best version of this group can be tier 1 without a doubt.
Yeah, which again just leads into the sky high potential, but maybe a lower floor than perhaps some people are giving them are paying attention to. The offensive line's also interesting. You have Braxton Jones, who's just a good tackle, and then Darnell Wright, who I wasn't crazy about his rookie year, but he was a solid rookie. I think that he was I think he's good. Like, I don't think you're worried about the tackles going into this. Tevin Jenkins is good at the guard position, and Coleman Shelton also was just a solid center. I do have some worries about the other guard, the Nate Davis starting is, again, he's not a disaster, but I don't think he's someone you typically are, I mean, he's had better years. He's coming off his worst year, so maybe this is a buy low situation. I don't know. Again, there's potential. You could have 5 really good starters if all of this hits. As a whole, I like it. I'm going to go tier 2.
Yep. I like it all too. I do think that Darnell Wright shows some good stuff in year 1, and I think he can be, a high-end right tackle. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if there's a star in this group, but it could be a very solid group across the board.
Yeah, so again, it's they made an effort to build around Caleb Williams. I think they've done that so far, but another aspect is making sure you have a quality defense, because obviously you don't want Caleb Williams to feel like he has to score touchdowns on every drive. That's part of his development. I remember to bring up my favorite team, the Buccaneers, when Jameis Winston was young. I think part of why he learned some bad habits was because he knew if he didn't score a touchdown on 5 drives, you're not winning the game. So he had to take more chances. Also, he liked taking chances. So let's talk about the defense. Jalen Johnson, one of the best corners in football. And then you have guys like Kyler Gordon, who I still do not believe isn't secretly just you when you changed a couple of letters in the name. You also have Terrell Smith at the cornerback position, Tyreek Stevenson, some good young players that maybe you're wondering, could they take the next step? Jalen Johnson, obviously, not another next step for him to take, but the other guys maybe. At the safety position, they added Kevin Byard, who should be very good, has played multiple schemes and been successful. See no reason why he wouldn't be good here. You also have Jaquan Brisker, who that should be a good safety tandem. So yeah, again, I think if one of those young players steps up, this could be better. But I think I'm going to go tier 2 coverage. You also have TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Edmonds not coming off his best season by any means, but I still think there's 2 talented linebackers. So as a whole, I like this group.
Yeah, it's a good group. And, if one of those young guys hits at the second corner spot, it could be a great group, without a doubt. Jalen Johnson, I think, is, kind of he's one of those trendy, we know he's really good, but we don't quite know, I don't think the conventional wisdom is how good he is. I think he's still kind of underrated in kind of the, outsider's perspective, the casual perspective. I know he made all-pro second team, but I thought he should have been all-pro first team. But that being said, Deron Bland did get a touchdown every other play, so it was hard to keep him out. But I think just as an individual corner, I think it's him and Sauce Gardner right now the conversation. Those are probably my 1 and 2. I think he's in that conversation for sure, and he's been fantastic. And, you don't want a weak link in your secondary. We have said that time and time again. But that being said, when you have one corner who can kind of take away half the field, it makes it a whole lot easier to scheme your defense, and they just need one of those other young guys to hit.
The one thing I would say, you know me, I'm also a huge Jalen Johnson fan, but the only thing I would critique is I think it's fair to mention he's someone who coming off his best season. His last year was unbelievable. I agree, should have been first team All Pro, but it is, that's the only year I would say that about him. So corners can be a little fluky, but still, I doubt he's going to fall that far if he does have a little bit of reverting to the mean.
Yeah. And then, even if he reverts a little bit, like I said, if there's a little bit of development at some of these other guys, Tyreek Stevenson's a guy who had, it wasn't a perfect season, but he had some moments. I think he could be a capable number 2 corner. If they get a little bit of development there, then it makes up for it.
Yeah, I agree. Kyle, I don't love this defensive line. I like Montez Sweat a lot. I think he's a real underrated player because kind of he was in Chase Young's shadow, despite being better than Chase Young pretty consistently. Sort of famously, he led both the Bears and the Commanders in sacks last year, which is a fun stat. But I think there's more about the Bears supporting cast and the Commanders than it does anything else. I think that I still don't love the rest of this defensive line for the Bears. I mean, you have, I guess DeMarcus Walker would probably be the other starter at the edge position. Andrew Billings, who's, I guess there are other, he's a quality player. Like, nothing against him. But when he's your second best defensive lineman, you have a Gervin Dexter Sr. I just, I think that there's some. This is the weak spot. I'm going to go tier 4s across the board for run defense and pass rush.
Yeah. The defensive line does need some work, but that being said, I think this team is built at the back. It's built with, they paid 2 linebackers, and I think those 2 linebackers played very well last season. They paid Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, high-level linebacker money, and they played like high-level linebackers. So they're built with their, their back 7, if you include the linebackers too. And, I'm a big Sweat fan. I think he's a really quality player. I think a couple years ago we did a bold predictions one, and I said he was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Hasn't quite lived up to that, but he has been very, very good. And it's hard to say individual impact for players, but this was a completely different defense by the time when he showed up, right? Like, it changed a lot of this team, and it's just kind of having that one consistent option that felt like he was that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's funny because that was the one trade people made fun of, and then people like the Chase Young trade, and really those have kind of gone in different directions.
Well, the funny thing is that it was made fun of, I think, because they did the same thing with Chase Claypool the year before, and then it just turned out Chase Claypool wasn't a good football player. Montez Sweat was actually just a good football player that they got for, at the trade deadline. Then, they were buying when they didn't need to buy, but they viewed it as good value.
Yeah, and I think so far it has been. Kyle, I'm not ready to call this team a playoff team just yet. Maybe they get in if I think they're in the ballpark. I think they're a bubble playoff team. I'm gonna go 8-9 for the Chicago Bears. I'm not as high on Caleb Williams as you are. I don't think Caleb Williams' mom is as high on him as you are. I think that you're a big fan of him. I really like him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a player who will be a rookie, and you can't just expect him to have a CJ Stroud rookie season. But I really do like this receiving core, offensive line, running back room, and coverage unit. And I think that I also think that I'll let you react to that, and then we'll talk about the ceiling of this team.
Yeah, no, I completely understand it. I think that there could still easily be some growing pains, without a doubt. I think they have done a very good job of putting him in probably the best position for a rookie quarterback to succeed in a long time, right? So they have given him a lot of help that I think that he's going to need. And, I think that when people watch Caleb Williams, you do have to remember this is probably the worst he's going to be of his entire NFL career. So even if it's choppy at times, I think it's going to get better each week. And he's going to have, a few plays a game that it's like, what the heck are you thinking? Because he is definitely one of those guys who's like, I'm going to try this because I'm more talented than everybody else. But the best stuff is going to look awesome, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, I still have to say, I don't see that much of a difference in his college tape from him and Zach Wilson. Which says something about just the weirdness of Zach Wilson, but also there are a lot of similarities in their game. And I think Williams had a higher comp. I'm not saying I think Williams was going to hit, but I also thought Zach Wilson was going to hit.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely fair. There is some justification there. But yeah, I liked him a little bit more. But
sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it turns out because, there's been a lot of comparisons for Caleb Williams coming out of college. And there's probably a lot of scenarios where he does turn into a Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers type player. And there's probably a lot of scenarios where he does turn into, the Zach Wilson kind of player that we just talked about. Like
Mhm.
it's not, it's not a foregone conclusion that this works out for sure. I'm still betting on it, and I'm still excited to see it.
Yeah, or somewhere in between Patrick Mahomes and Zach Wilson. That's also possible.
Yeah. So I guess the thing is, you talked about the ceiling. So let's just
Mhm.
let's if Caleb Williams is the 14th best quarterback next season, is this team a playoff team?
I think so. But Kyle, I'm
Yeah.
actually interested in a different conversation. I'm going to
Okay.
give you a hot take right here. All right, hot take off the jump. I think if this Bears team hits their ceiling as a whole, all of the ifs hit, I think this team could win the Super Bowl next year. I think they have that much potential. I think that I'm not. I don't. Most teams don't hit their potential in every single category, but I think that there is so much upside for Caleb Williams, for this receiving core, for this defense. I really do think, and they're in the NFC, which I think is weaker this year. I really do think that like it's not. If you had a time machine, came back and said the Bears are winning the Super Bowl, bet the house on the Bears. I'm not sure if I believe you, but I would. I wouldn't be shocked that the Bears won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I I agree. I think that they can. That being said, that's a lot of ifs, right? Like, so
Absolutely.
that's still, I still think this team from being a true contender is probably a year or two away. But that
Hmm.
being said, I think it's the right strategy. You have the rookie quarterback contract, and they have to maximize it, and it looks like they're maximizing that window as much as they can, at least.
All I'm saying is I can see a pathway to victory, right? That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. Just I can figure out like if again the time machine thing. If someone says they won the Super Bowl, I'm like, oh, okay. So Caleb Williams hit. This receiving core was awesome, and their defense was really good.
Yeah, yeah. If we try to make a roadmap for every team to win the Super Bowl, this is definitely in the top half of teams.
Yeah, if you do it for the Vikings, I'm like, okay, did Nick Mullins come out and win an MVP? Did they have did they
Did they
what
sign
happened
Tom
here?
Brady? Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're very confusing. Again, I think people in the comments are confused with what I'm saying a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think I made that clear.
Jackson Kruger Sports, the Chicago Bears are winning the Super Bowl.
Yes, exactly. Just edit out. You can clip that and make it work the way you want to. Kyle, there are two teams left who are starting to develop their own kind of rivalry, I feel like, because for the longest time it's been a one-sided rivalry. But you have the Lions and the Packers. 2 years ago, the Lions kept the Packers from making the playoffs on the last game of the season. Last year, they both lost to the same team in the playoffs. That team went on to go to the Super Bowl. Kyle, every single Lions. You can make this the most disliked podcast of our series if you pick the Lions to finish second. Who are you picking to finish second here?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on this because there's two sides to this. I feel like I have created a very nice relationship with Detroit Lions fans. I
It
have
helps that
been,
you have me as a podcast co-host.
yeah, I have been the Dan Campbell guy since day
Hmm.
one. I
Hmm.
have been with this team. I have defended Jared Goff when he's played well. I have done
Hmm.
everything I needed to do to be the Detroit Lions, pseudo fan here on this podcast. I feel like I'm one of the Lion Nation. You could put me next to Eminem if you wanted to.
Hmm.
That being said, there are a lot of Packers fans in this group. We have a lot of Packers fans in this chat, don't we? So it could go either way here. But I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers at number two.
Okay.
Um,
I thought you were maybe gonna get crazy here, Kyle.
no, not too crazy. Although I do see a lot of people trying to pick the Packers to win the division, and it wouldn't shock me. This is a very good team. I have to see the defense play well to believe it. I do think the defensive coordinator change is gonna be impactful. I don't know how impactful. There are some guys on this defense that we're just expecting to get better with a better defensive coordinator, and I just want to see that happen first. So I think that's my first big question. And then I just think, we've talked about it a lot this offseason. We're both big fans of Jordan Love. The best version of Jordan Love could be a top 5 quarterback this season. I don't think that's an absurd take. That being said, he is a guy who's been a little inconsistent basically his entire life. Are we going to see the best version of Jordan Love? Are we going to see the Jordan Love that we think could be an MVP candidate? Or are we going to see the Jordan Love that was awesome and then not awesome and then kind of awesome and then kind of okay? then kind of bad, and then awesome for 6 straight weeks. If that's Jordan Love, then I think this Packers ceiling goes down a little bit. So I'm curious to see how this ends the season for Green Bay.
Yeah, it's the Jordan Love thing can remind me a little bit of the Trevor Lawrence thing last year, where you start off slow, has a really good final. Love has this great final half of the season and plays really well in the playoffs as well. And I think a lot of people are like, well, there we go. The second half of the year is who he is because he's a young player. But it's like, well, I don't know. Like Matt Stafford had pretty good like stretches and then would go back down to earth. Like not everyone is like that. So it's again, I'm not saying that's not what happened. I'm just saying I don't think you can jump to that conclusion. Similar to how Lawrence, we've kind of seen he's had his own ups and downs. That being said, he was really good when he was good last year. I'm going to say tier 2 quarterback and tier 2 head coach. I'm not betting against these guys right now.
Yeah, and I mean we've done the LaFleur thing. I know there's a lot of people who are kind of up and down on LaFleur, especially in Packers Nation. But at the same time, the guy has gotten results almost every season. He's done a very good job. And then just to do the Jordan Love thing, basically from November 19th on, he was simply one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He had 1 interception during that time. He was pretty dominant in almost all of those games. Even some of the losses, he was really good. And it was a fantastic second half of the season. That was a completely different guy from the guy we saw at the start of the year. And, a lot of that was probably year-to-year development and just, kind of seeing the game a little bit more because it was his first time starting. But yeah, I mean, he turned into a completely different guy. That was awesome.
Yeah. It's really good stuff. I am interested in how this receiving core can work because it's definitely, I keep hearing people say like, oh, Aaron Rodgers couldn't make this receiving core work, but Jordan Love can. Well, they have added players. Like it is a different receiving core. In fact, a good chunk of these players were like rookies last year. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. You had it was Luke Musgrave, who was a rookie as well, and Tucker Kraft. Like those are 4 like quality options that were rookies. You also have Romeo Doubs continuing to play, Christian Watson getting another year older. So it's none of these guys are like. As a Packers fan, I don't know who you would get a jersey of. I mean, you're getting a Jordan Love jersey, but like, if you wanted a second jersey, like I'm not sure which one of these guys you get the jersey of, but there are a lot of just guys who can play well.
A lot of guys who can definitely play well. And like you said, a lot of young options that really showed some stuff last season. So I am excited about this group. I think we saw flashes out of guys like Wicks, Dobbs, Reed, Musgrave. That's a really fun young group. This could be me being biased. I did have him as a first round prospect when he was in the NFL draft. And, it's been a little up and down since a lot of it has been injuries though, since he's been in. I still think the ceiling of this receiving core comes down to Christian Watson because I think this simple thing is like when he plays, he looks good and he catches touchdowns. He has 12 touchdowns in 23 games his first 2 seasons. He just needs to play and he needs to be consistently playing. Like I think he's the ceiling of this receiving core because I think he has elite potential, but we just need to sit and put it all together and be on the field.
Get back to that in a second, just because an incredible comment here. Packers fans can buy referee jerseys. Well done. 10 out of 10.
I want to know who he's a fan of. Probably the Bears, right?
I see it said Lions earlier, so I'm guessing Lions.
Oh yeah, maybe Lions. So there you go.
That would check out. I think the Lions, when the Lions and Packers play, might go one way. Some people might say I should probably not say that when we're doing the Packers section because the Packers fans have only skipped to this part. I agree with you about Christian Watson though. I just in general, and why I'm still going to give this a tier 3 room is just I don't know who their number 1 is. I don't know who, if you have a good second. I mean, I think we saw it in San Francisco, right? Like there were issues when obvious passing play, like who is going to just go win. And they didn't really have that consistently enough. Again, I like all these guys, but I don't love any of them. And if you have to beat a good corner, if Christian Watson can reach his potential, he could be that. Also, Kyle, got to mention, who's picked with pick 34. Okay, it's not that far off from a first round just selection.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, I get it. So yeah, I mean that's just the big thing for me is I think that they need that number 1 option because it is a lot of good options. But there are going to be plays in some of these playoff games, or if this team makes the playoffs again, that You just need a guy to go win one-on-one. And you're playing against the very best teams and the very best players. And one of these guys has to show they can be that guy. And I still think he has the most talent of that group by far.
Yeah. For the running back room, you have Josh Jacobs as the starter, I suppose. You still have AJ Dillon there. I don't know what to make of Josh Jacobs. I mean, again, it's the thing that just constantly breaks my brain that he's only 26 years old. Like that just doesn't feel like that should be like he should be like 32. I feel like, but no, he is just 26. It does feel though like okay, when you've been in the NFL for 5 seasons now, you're coming off your worst year. Like, are you going to bounce back? Again, with the Raiders, though, he was really good and worth mentioning. Not the best situation last year for him. But at the same time, it's almost like I remember Allen Robinson was the thing where he had a bad year and everyone was like, well, look at the situation, but you couldn't do that because he had like 9 bad situations in previous years. Like Jacobs has been in bad situations before and succeeded. So I don't know what to make of that. I still like AJ Dillon as depth. There's a boomer bust factor here, so I'm just going to stay with tier 3 for now.
Yeah. I like Jacobs. I think he's a good player. I think he is going to have a good season. I would bet on it. I mean, the interesting thing when it comes to Jacobs is, like, I could see the thing where, as you were saying, can you bounce back from a bad season, especially as a running back in year 6? Because the other thing is, too, is, like, he's had a lot of, he's had 1,300 carries in 5 seasons. Like, the Raiders, we question drafting the rookie running back round 1 all the time. We always say it's a bad idea. But that being said, if you're gonna draft him round 1, use him. And the Raiders definitely weren't afraid to use him the last 5 seasons. They ran him and they gave him the ball a lot, and he's had a lot of touches. He's had a lot of carries. That's a lot of miles on his legs, and so that's the thing I'm curious about. But he is a very talented player, and I think he could have another couple good seasons in him.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Kyle, I'm not sure if you saw the something in the chat, but I do have news to report. I have confirmed this because people post things in the chat all the time that aren't true, so I have to double check everything. Kyle, your favorite player, Matthew Judon, is a member of the Atlanta Falcons. They have traded him to the Atlanta Falcons. Third rounder is what the Patriots are getting back.
A third-round pick?
Yeah.
I hate the NFL. Like,
Sorry,
we do this crap all the time. Why do teams do this? They wait until they have absolutely no leverage before they actually trade players. It is the dumbest concept. I hate every NFL GM. I want to light them all on fire. I am so sick of this crap. We just traded our best player for a third-round pick. Our very best player, because we waited till we had no leverage.
Yeah.
Just move on. What's the next segment? Offensive line. What are we doing?
Okay. All right. Kyle does not want to talk about this situation. Kyle, the Packers offensive line has some players. You have Zach Tom, who is one of the many Packers players that they drafted that we're all like, okay, well, probably not going to amount to anything, and it's been really good for them. Ellington Jenkins, another guy who's been that. He's the going to play guard this year. He can play everywhere. You have Jordan Morgan, who's also slotted in to be guard. He's someone who they drafted with a first-round pick. Many felt like they didn't need to spend a first-round pick on him, but we'll see how well that goes. You also have Rasheed Walker, who should be an all right tackle, and then Josh Myers, who again is probably going to be forever known as the center they drafted before Creed Humphrey, but isn't the worst center in the world, but also is probably a weak spot in this. I don't know. I wasn't crazy about Jordan Morgan. I think he could do okay year 1. And again, you do kind of trust the Packers with this stuff. Other than Jenkins, is there really a star here? Again, I like Zach Tom. I think I'm going to stick with tier 3 offensive line for now.
Yeah, it is a group that conventional wisdom is like the Packers just build offensive lines and we kind of just accept it. That being said, it hasn't been as good the last couple seasons, I think. And I think part of that has been that they've been dealing with David Bakhtiari's body just breaking down. And that's been something that they haven't really been able to overcome. So, I still think it's a solid group. I don't think there's a major flaw here, but it's not like an awesome group either, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to let's see, where are we going here? Let's go to the defense now. The defensive line's interesting because you have Rashawn Gary, who there was a point when he kind of finally all put it together, was out there the whole season and was just awesome. It's still really good. I think it's still a good player. I don't know if he's quite that elite level edge rusher we thought he'd be, but he's still a probably a consistent Pro Bowl guy. Preston Smith is going to be, across from him. And then you have Lucas Van Ness, who they drafted, who was okay. I think that he's someone who, at this point in his career, is just a role player. I think they're hoping can be more than that. Kenny Clark, who is still very good on the inside. You have TJ Slayton and former first round pick Devontae Wyatt on the interior for the defense. And then for the linebackers, Quay Walker, who has really had flashes. Can he put it together consistently is kind of the question. They drafted Edgerrin Cooper, who I really liked coming out of college. So I don't know. I think this is good, not great. I think I'm going to go tier 2s across the board for pass rush and run defense.
I like the depth, and they've drafted a lot for these positions. Like you said, Van Ness, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker. They've really, and Edgerrin Cooper too. So they've invested a lot in these positions. It's just kind of like, I think everyone's kind of just turned into okay football players. Like they had Rashawn Gary, obviously another guy that I think they drafted originally. So, he is someone that's developed with them too. So, he's probably turned into the best case scenario, but like no one's really turned into like a stud. There's just a lot of really good guys that they've drafted and they've invested draft picks in.
Yeah. And again, football is a sport about depth, so that helps. The defensive line, or excuse me, we just did the defensive line. The coverage unit, you have, I already talked about the linebackers. Javon Bullard, a second round pick, they're going to try to start right away. Xavier McKinney, the other safety there. As for the corners, you have Jair Alexander, who I still think is good. Again, like he's similar to Rashawn Gary, like hasn't quite been like that elite level guy, but has still been like a quality player. Keyshawn Nixon is another guy, and I guess Eric Stokes is still there. We'll see if they get anything out of him because I don't know exactly what else. I don't love this depth, to be honest. I do like Jair Alexander. I do like the safeties, but I don't know. I'm kind of in between tier 3 and tier 4. I guess I'll stick. I think I'm gonna go tier 4. I just don't love this depth.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely the group that they're hoping for the most development out of this next season, right? And I think this is the biggest group where you talk about the defensive coordinator change, that they're expecting improvement. Because I think the past couple of years, you looked at this team on paper secondary-wise and said this should be a pretty good secondary. And it just hasn't played well. Now, granted, this season, they are expecting big things out of Xavier McKinney, and I thought that was a really good free agent signing for them, too. I thought that was smart. So they bring him in. They have Alexander, who they're expecting kind of a return to form. And he's had some, minor injuries and stuff here or there too that have also played a huge part in, his stagnation, I would say. But I think a lot of this is defensive coordinator development. Do they think that the changes they made to their scheme are going to help this secondary be better on paper, be as good as it should be on paper?
Yeah, and that I think gets me to my biggest concern with this Packers team. I do think it's a playoff team. I do think this is a double-digit win team, but I have my concerns about, can this be essentially what Packers fans are hoping for is not, okay, how can this new player come in and change the team? It's how can our players just get better? Like they do have some new players, of course, but like it pretty much, like for this team to take the next step and be a championship contender, it's essentially how do the players that we had on our roster last year play better this year?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's completely fair because that's going to be a big part of the defense. And, I think we saw it at times during the season, especially in that, that San Francisco game where they did have a shot to win that game, right? But it just came down to a couple little things, could they link up a pass play? And as we talked about with this preview, do you have one receiver that can go get a big play for you late in the game? Do you have one corner or something like that can go get a stop? Because it was like George Kittle in that game, Jawan Jennings with some big catches in that playoff game. Can those pieces, do you have those players that get you over the top? Because I think if you go through the roster, there's a lot of like solid players on this roster. I felt like I said that multiple times in this preview. But, who are your blue chip guys that you're really going to rely on besides Jordan Love?
Yeah, they could really use a guy like Matthew Judon.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, sorry. Kyle, so I forgot to talk about the poll when we were talking about the Chicago Bears, so I'll just reveal it here. It's 8% said the Bears will win the division, which, again, feels a little low, but I bet that's probably partially because people are very high in these top 2 teams. Kyle, what percentage do you think have the Packers winning this division? And again, only 12% are off the board right now.
Yeah, 12%. I think this is going to be pretty high because I think there's a lot of Packers fans in the group subscribing. So I'm going to go I'm gonna go 47%.
Okay, you're too high.
Yeah.
The Lions. The chat does predict the, or excuse me, the poll does predict the Lions to win the division, but 27% have the Packers.
27? Wow.
Yeah,
I thought it would be much higher. Well, I guess, I do like this Lions team, so I could see it for sure.
yeah. I think it's worth mentioning. Sometimes, with the exception of the Raiders, I think most people that are voting like non-biased.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, I mean, and I think it's in fairness, I also would say, if you're a Lions fan whose biased opinion is that your team's going to be really good this year, you're probably not too far off.
Without a doubt. And that's why I have the Detroit Lions winning this division, because there is a ton of talent when you go through this roster. We've done a lot of Jared Goff stuff this offseason. I feel like we've talked about him quite a bit. I think he's good. I don't think he's great. I think there will be a lot of Lions fans that argue he's great, but I don't think he needs to be great, because you look at this group. This is a awesome receiving core. This is maybe the best offensive line in football. They have two really good running backs, and that's what they rely on with this offense. And not to mention, they're going to have one of the best play callers in football as their offensive coordinator. So all that goes together. The thing that's going to separate this team from great to potentially, fulfilling all the Lions fans' fantasies is how much better this defense get, because this team, this fan base thinks it can win a Super Bowl, and it all comes down to how much better is it going to be. They've invested in it. I think it's a good group, and we're going to see how it turns out this season for Detroit, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, plenty of reasons to be excited if you're a Lions fan. I'm still going tier 3 quarterback with Jared Goff. I just am. Jared Goff, I don't love him when a play breaks down. I do think he's fantastic, though, at just running the offense the way he's supposed to. Game manager usually gets used as an insult, but he is an incredible game manager. And for the coaching staff, I'm just going to say the coaching staff in general is tier 1, because I think when we did our coaching rankings, it's like, how much credit do you give Dan Campbell? How much credit do you give Ben Johnson? Well, I have them both this year. So it's a tier 1 coaching staff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is fantastic. And, Ben Johnson seems to, I guess, is being patient when it comes to being a head coach. I think he's going to get some offers, so it's going to be fascinating with that. And then Dan Campbell's just come in and got results. They've improved every year. He's set high expectations, and it feels like they perform to them. And, I mean, he's got to the point now where we're talking about the Lions as a Super Bowl team. I don't think anybody would have said that 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a pretty insane turnaround, and they've done a very good job from the front office, coaching staff, hiring as their coaching staff, and, executing this. As far as the Jared Goff thing goes, I mean, it's just 100% true. He is a game manager. But that being said, there was a reason he was the number 1 overall pick. He's got insane arm talent. So when he's able to set in the pocket, run the game script, he's going to make good throws because he is insanely talented in that regard. There's just not a lot of improvisation there. And I think that's the one thing holding him back from becoming that elite guy, even though he's in a position where he can put up elite numbers because, as we said, tier 1 coaching staff, and we're going to get into the rest of the offense. It's all pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lions fans might get annoyed that Ben Johnson almost gets all the credit for all of it. I do think, though, he is the center of this whole thing. I think he is what it all is branched off of. But you're right; it's not to say there isn't other good stuff here. Or Amon-Ra St. Brown, really good. Sam Laporta, really good. And then I do think you have some questions about the depth here. Like, will Jameson Williams do more than just be a guy who comes in and is a gadget player? Can he do more than that this year? You have Kaif Raymond, who our first chat of this podcast was about him for some reason. So giving him a shout out. I do worry about the depth a little bit. And again, I mean, you think about the important games. This team is trying to win a Super Bowl. I do think in that San Francisco game on those 4th downs, people talk about the decision to go for it, but the other aspect is they didn't get it, and that was the depth players not coming through when Goff needed them to. Like, Reynolds dropped that. Well, he dropped one of the passes, and then there was no one got open on the second play. So can't have a whole season just and talk about 2 plays, but sometimes it comes down to 2 plays. So all that being said, still a really good receiving core, but I'm going tier 3 because I just don't love the depth.
Yeah, I can agree with it. I do think, I'm not selling my Jameson Williams stock at all, just because.
Well, it's not evaluated very high right now, I would say.
It's not evaluated very high at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, we were both very high on in the draft, and I do think there's a scenario where he has a breakout season because, I mean, just as far as off the field stuff and, obviously, him getting suspended is his fault. He has to accept that. But at the same time, like that's about as like worst case scenario as like a start to a career has gone. Coming off the injury, his rookie season, missing so much time, and then getting that suspension last season. Like it's been difficult. It's been difficult. So I'm still optimistic that the really talented, young player, college prospect that we were really excited about is there. And I could see, if he turns out this is a tier 1 group, because I think he has that talent in him. And then I do think Khalif Raymond, he's a fine third receiver. But that's the thing though. So if Williams doesn't hit, as you mentioned the drop to end the season and all that, I do think they're going to miss a guy like Reynolds if they don't have that guy. I do think he's a guy who was pretty good for them last season.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. The running backs are also interesting to talk about. What I want to do now is spend 10 minutes arguing about Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay, no, not really. Gibbs he's a good running back. He had a hamstring injury, but apparently he's supposed to be fine. So that's definitely good news. Also, some real depth here. You have David Montgomery as well, and Craig Reynolds, who I like. Although, Kyle, this is a funny stat. David Montgomery is, in terms of PFF blocking grades, he has the highest PFF blocking grade out of those 3 running backs. And guess what it is?
Like 50.
It's 29.7, and he's leading the way. Not a great blocking running back road here.
No. That being said, I don't think they need a whole lot of blocking out of this group.
They're okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good group though. I mean, I like it. I mean, look, we made fun of the Jahmyr Gibbs thing a lot last season. He was better than Bijan Robinson. I still like Bijan Robinson,
which I said he would be as a runner. By the way, all those Lions fans calling me a hater. Yeah, I nailed it.
So yeah, I mean, I still like Bijan Robinson a lot. I still like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. I don't know if he should have been a first round pick still, but that is neither here or there. He was good. He was good, and
he's a good player. So that discussion's never been is he good or not. He's a good player.
Yeah, and so it's it was definitely frustrating for me as a fantasy owner of Jahmyr Gibbs, but that's a different conversation. So, it's a good running back room. I like it.
You know what else is good, Kyle? This offensive line. Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell, Kevin Zeitler, Graham Glasnow, and Frank Ragnow. When Kevin Zeitler is your weak link, I mean, this is debatably the best tackle tandem in football. You have debatably the best center in football, or at least one of the best centers, and a top 7 guard tandem in football. Tier 1, 10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah, it's probably the best group in the NFL.
Yeah, probably.
It's awesome. We've done the whole Penei Sewell thing. Ragnow and Decker are both really good players too. It's sick, and that's what they wanted to do. And that's kind of been the identity of this team for a couple of years now. They wanted to build off offensive line, and that's something that they've done during this Dan Campbell era, and they've done it very effectively. This is an incredible group.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, this offense will be greater than the sum of its parts because of how well they're coached as well. So that's the other thing you always have to factor in with this stuff. Last year, I was a big fan of this offense, but I kept kind of being a little bit more pessimistic on the Lions' chances than I think Lions fans wanted me to be, because I had concerns about this defense. They made it farther than I thought they would be. Those concerns did not rear its ugly head until late, although it did finally happen. They've made some real efforts to change that. They've really addressed this secondary in particular, drafting Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., both of whom I thought looked good in their first preseason game. They traded for Carlton Davis. They're paying him. They traded a 3rd-round pick and are paying him a good chunk of change for this season. But he's had some really good years with Tampa Bay, so I get why they're doing that. You have him, Amik Robinson here as well. So, and then of course Brian Branch, who kind of plays that. Calling him just a corner isn't really fair. He does several different things, but he's a very good cover player. As for the safeties, I think I would, Afidi Melifonwu is a good safety. I think he's good. I like him. Kirby Joseph, great when he's playing Aaron Rodgers. Does need to work on some consistency. I think that's fair to say. But as a whole, it's a group of depth. It doesn't really have a ton of stars, although I do really like Melifonwu and Branch. But I think I'm going to go tier 3 here for this group.
Yeah, it's a developmental group. Davis, it's one of those things where if everyone hits, it's going to be really good. But that being said,
tier 1 potential for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of new pieces to this group. Arnold and Rakestraw are going to have expectations year one. Carlton Davis is, gotta perform too, and I think he can. He's obviously a very talented player. And then Branch had a very good rookie season. We'll see if he follows that up. Joseph, and then there is some depth here too. So it's a nice group. I think they've done a really good job. This is the best case scenario based on what we had last year, right? Like being able to churn out this group in a year turnover, I think is really impressive.
Yeah, completely agree. I think they've done absolutely a really good offseason, I thought. And for the front seven, so you have Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone, and you have Jack Campbell, who I don't care what anyone says about, oh, well, they drafted him to be a developmental guy. I think they wanted more out of Jack Campbell than they got last year. He still played 745 snaps. I think they were hoping for more than what they got, and they might get that this year. The defensive line, well, I still don't love the I don't know. You have Marcus Davenport. I guess we'll just see with him, right? Coming off a year where he just didn't play much, so it's usually been pretty good. And then you have Aiden Hutchinson, who again we could spend a whole hour talking about how much we like him. A defensive interior with DJ Reiner and Aleem McNeil. I'm not willing to. I don't know what to make of Davenport as of right now, but I still, even without him, I think this could be a really good group. I think I'm going to go tier 1 run defense, tier 2 pass rush.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good group, and I think they did a lot to stop the run last year. I think they ended up numbers wise being pretty good against the run, but I think they also just said we can't suck at both stopping the run and pass, so let's just do whatever we can to stop it. And instead, they just went and got DJ Reader to say, let's just fix that, and then we'll figure out the pass. So I think it's going to work out for them, and I do worry about depth of pass rush options, but at the same time, if your first option is Aiden Hutchinson, I think you're in a pretty good spot. So I think they have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate there, and I think that could really help. That helps fix a lot of holes in that group.
Yeah, Kyle. So for this Lions team, I mean, you could make the argument, take the quarterback out of the equation. This is the best roster in football. I don't think that's a crazy argument to make. I do think that even with putting the quarterback into the argument, into the conversation, this might be the best roster in football. There is no thing I'm looking at and that's a massive concern. There's things that I look at and say, okay, that could go wrong. Like again, like the coverage, I'm like, that could go wrong. The receiver depth could go wrong. But I guess Jared Goff, if he goes up against Bill Belichick again, I guess he's happy. But no one got him. I think this team's really good. I think this team's gonna really make some noise. I'm predicting another 13-4 season for them.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think this team can win the Super Bowl, no doubt. I think this is as high as expectations as Lions fans should have, probably in their entire lifetimes. So I think it's a really good group. I think if Jameson Williams hits, and then maybe the secondary, shows some development, this could be the best team in the NFC by far. So that is still, kind of to be determined, but those are really good qualities to have. If those are your two biggest concerns, I think you're in a great spot.
Yeah. And here's the other thing that's great about if you're a Lions fan right now. We've only done half of the NFC, although don't worry, the NFC South isn't really getting a team that I'm too high on. Although there's, again, Atlanta's solid. They just added a good player. Sorry, Kyle. But, we've only done half of the NFC so far, but only one out of my top 7 ranked teams right now are in the NFC, and it's the Detroit Lions. So the lack of a lot of, and we'll get into the NFC West, there will be another one there, but the lack of the high end talent, I think, in this conference really makes you feel as well this team could be winning it all.
Yeah, and that was kind of the conversation last year too. We felt like San Francisco had an easier path than Kansas City. It didn't work out for them, but that was kind of our conversation throughout the season. Is they should be able to manage this a lot better, and it worked for San Francisco, and it could work for Detroit this season.
Yeah. So Kyle, you can do the math if you want to. I know you know it's going to be a high number. 60% have the Lions winning the division. It's a landslide victory.
Yeah. big odds here, and man, it's just it's still so crazy to say the Lions are 68% favorites to win a division. What a time!
Yeah, I mean 60, not 68, but yeah, it
Oh yeah,
is still crazy to say that. Definitely a crazy times, and I think they've done some nice things with their cap too. There was a point when I was worried, like, is this their all in year? I kind of don't think it is. Like, I think they're going to be good for a couple years. I think the only thing you worry about is like if Ben Johnson leaves, but he's here this year, so I think you're feeling good.
yeah, and they could always hire another good offensive coordinator. So, I think
Right.
they got a lot of really nice pieces here, and I'm excited to see it. And hopefully, this is a multi-year window for Detroit fans because they've earned this.
Yes. Yeah. So there we go. That is our show. Next week we are doing the NFC West, where we will discuss, the team that beat a lot of these teams in the playoffs, the 49ers. So be on the lookout for that. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gron, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if you like audio only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It should be available there. We have Tom B in all caps saying Ben Johnson will never leave. Wait, Tom B, that's not Tom Brady, is it? Oh my God, Kyle! I think Tom Brady has become a Lions fan and is watching our podcast.
He's all in on the Ben Johnson hype train, I guess.
I suppose so. Yeah, I guess so. I think the Tom Brady would be a big fan of Ben Johnson.
I could see it. Yeah, I mean that's probably pretty easy.
Do we? Kyle, I had a thought the other day randomly. Is it possible Tom Brady just made Josh McDaniels his whole career?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. This is, I think so.
I think Tom Brady made a lot of careers, to be fair. So
that's possible. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, yeah, he's kind of sucked everywhere other than the Patriots.
yeah, I think a lot of guys have sucked outside of the Patriots. I wonder why.
Yeah, I think so. But luckily, I mean, unfortunately, Kyle, I think that you're now might be experiencing some of that.
Yeah, tough time for Patriots fan. Hug a Patriots fan today for sure.
Yes, everyone, offer Kyle your best wishes. Kyle, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, let's get out of here.
Yes, of course. Tom B says, "Oh, I'm not Tom Brady, but I am to go." Oh, it's Patrick Mahomes.
Oh my gosh! Now I'm hanging up.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry to all Patriots fans who've had a rough last hour. Again, thank you to everybody for watching. We do appreciate it. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.